Hi everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of Nike's Stuff. E3 is coming up in a few weeks, and with it, I predict that Nintendo will reveal some stuff about Breath of the Wild sequel. So before that happens, I just want to talk about some things that I would like to see in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. These are not predictions, I bet all of these, if not most of these, won't happen, but I don't care. These are the things I would like to see in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Majora's Mask is my second favorite Zelda game, and a big reason of why I like it are the masks, especially the transformation one. The Deku, Goron, and Zora mask allow you to turn into those races and use their abilities, like a Goron's roll and a Zora's swim speed. Having transformation masks allows for more puzzle types, and my gosh, just rolling around as a Goron is so fun. Of course, Deku were not present in Breath of the Wild, but I don't think anyone would really care about playing as a Deku, but being able to play as a Goron and a Zora would be really cool. On one hand, I'd love to see Hyrule rebuilt. I'd love to see Hyrule Castletown and Lon Lon Ranch in the world of Breath of the Wild. I'd love to see a fixed Hyrule, but at the same time, having the same world would be less exciting. It wouldn't be a new world to explore. So I'd like to see Breath of the Wild's Hyrule return, but I want something more different than, oh, some ruins are now buildings. In the Breath of the Wild 2 teaser, Link and Zelda are exploring some underground area, so maybe there could be a whole new underground world to explore, with new enemies, loot, etc. Also, just a thing I'd love to see, it would be so cool if Holodrum and Labrynna from the Oracle games reappeared, but that would be very unlikely. Instead of dungeons, Breath of the Wild had Link conquer shrines and divine beasts. I like the shrines, there was a good variety of puzzle shrines, combat shrines, and quest shrines, and I like how they're like dungeons, but they don't require you to sink an hour into it. And the divine beasts all take the role of dungeons more so than shrines. I love the divine beasts, it's so cool to explore these giant mechanical animals, and turning them to access different areas is so cool, but at the same time, they're all really similar. You weaken its defense with one of the champion's descendants, you board it and activate all the points, then you fight again in Blight. Don't get me wrong, it's cool, but the color scheme is the same for every divine beast, the tasks are the same, the bosses, while different, feel very similar. So I'd like to see more unique dungeons. This is a wacky one and a very unlikely one, but I recently beat Zelda 2, and I really like this game. It's really hard, there's a lot of weird stuff, but it's incredibly unique and different with it being a side-scroller and an action RPG. I'd love to see the sequel incorporate the RPG elements that were in Zelda 2, and by that I really just mean getting experience from killing enemies and using that to level up magic, strength, and defense. I'm thinking that if you up your strength, you can push bigger boulders which allow you to access different secrets. I don't think they should lock the story behind grinding and stuff, but I think it would be neat if grinding made the game a bit easier as a reward. By the way, Zelda 2 gets way too much hate. It's hard, but its RPG elements are actually really fun, and the side-scrolling gameplay is really unique. Don't hate on Zelda 2 if you haven't played it. You don't need to love Zelda 2, but play it before you give it crap. Gosh, I love the hookshot. It's my favorite Zelda item. You can hookshot to chests, you can stun enemies, it's great, and it's even cooler in 3D Zelda. So where is the hookshot in Breath of the Wild? Breath of the Wild did things differently than other Zelda games, where you don't get an item from each dungeon. Instead, in the tutorial area, you were given the 4 runes, which is everything you need to beat the game. It's cool, but I'd love to see traditional items return. I'd love to see the item renting mechanic from A Link Between Worlds return. You can rent any item whenever you want, allowing you to make decisions on where you want to go next. I like the system, but there's a major flaw. When you die, the items you are renting are taken away and you have to re-rent them. I think if the game gives the player the option to keep or lose the items after they die, it would be better. If they choose to lose the items, they're taken away. If they choose to keep them, maybe they can just pay 10% of the rental price, so if it costed 100 rupees to rent the hookshot, it would cost 10 rupees to keep the hookshot whenever you die. Listen, I love Ganon, but there are so many other cool Zelda villains. Vati, Majora, General Onox, Varen. There are so many other cool Zelda antagonists. And I think it would be cool if we saw any of these guys again. I'm sure Ganon will be the main antagonist, but I think it would be cool if he at least teams up with one of these other villains. Breath of the Wild saw the return of Lynels and Hinox. Lynels have appeared in a few Zelda games over the years, but they haven't been crazy powerful or anything. They aren't menacing, but they were brought back in Breath of the Wild, and oh man, Lynels are some of the hardest non-boss enemies in the game. Fighting them is a challenge, but also incredibly fun. Their return in Breath of the Wild is fantastic, and same goes for Hinox. Their most notable appearances were in Link's Awakening as a dungeon mini-boss, and they just look like goofballs. In Breath of the Wild, they look like goofballs, who are also a challenging fight, mainly early on in the game. My point is, Breath of the Wild took these classic enemies that weren't so tough and turned them into kinda terrifying enemies, and I'd love to see that done with other enemies. The Tektites weren't in Breath of the Wild, and I think it would be awesome if they were these giant monsters shown in this art. It would give arachnophobes nightmares, but I think it would be really cool, especially if part of the game did take place underground. Redeads are also missing from Breath of the Wild, and they can also be incredibly terrifying. Basically, I want to see classic Zelda enemies brought back in a similar manner to Hinox and Lynel. And yeah, those are some things I'd love to see in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. I guess, out of all of it, I want a good game that builds and expands upon the lore of Breath of the Wild, and doesn't create another timeline split because of having stupid time travel. That's just lazy writing. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I just hope Breath of the Wild sequel is good. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. I have to go.
Bomb some Dodongos!